If you think that Rocky is just a low-budget boxing flick that spawned a franchise with some questionable entries and then got CPR with a spin-off, you'd be nearly right. But what if I told you that the thing that you had wrong wasn't a boxing flick? And cut! Let's go again. Rocky's a story that still speaks loud and clear to people 42 years on. Young and old watch it and find a truth in it, and I'm going to explore how that's possible. This video is just about the first film, so what keeps it relevant? Well, the first thing is there's no villain in Rocky. Most people don't have arch enemies or rapscallions plotting their doom in life. For most people, even by teenage, the villain in their life is the disappointment of promise lost. This story charts a path to a reclamation of that lost promise. The opening title gives an epic feel, like Caesar entering Rome, or the beginning of films of old like Ben-Hur. It is to fanfare, like the heralding of a conquering hero, but, and this just might be my ears, it sounds a little muted, a little flat. This opening title sets a stage for a hero. We know he's the hero, but there's a loss of vibrancy and spark indicated by the dull grey of the lettering. We open to a shot of Jesus, and I'm not religious, but to me the statement's clear. Jesus was supposed to bring a new promise and a message of love, and that is what this film sets out to do in a modern, well, 70s setting. This is a story about redefining who you are through pain, suffering, and ultimately reaching a resurrection, all fueled and catalyzed by love. And the fact that this image is above the ring seems to me to be indicating that the boxing is a metaphor for the journey of a man out of the darkness and into the light. I mean, come on. The words resurrection are on the poster. And we open to a dark, sleazy, smoky, litter-filled room with two fighters scrambling in the dark, basic and primitive. The crowd are not fans, they're critics. This is a hostile world. The first dialogue comes not from Rocky, but from his supposed support structure. The trainer is just full of criticism. You're waltzing, fighting like a bum. And this is where the audience can connect, even if they've never boxed. The world is difficult for many people. Those who are meant to support often don't. He asks Rocky, do you want some good advice? Rocky doesn't. He wants water, mouthpiece, but no advice. This tells us everything. He's a practical man who is surviving but does not take good advice. When things are bleak, we often stop following good advice. The scarcity stops us thinking with our best minds. We make poor choices at times when we most need to make great choices to get out of the darkness. This film appeals because it's a story of what happens when you make a string of poor decisions, and then what happens when you make a string of right-minded decisions. It's effectively a visual self-help book, but we'll get to that. We're also given a key fact of Rocky's character. Injustice and pain triggers his fight response. He doesn't cower or freeze, he reacts with aggression. The problem is that his life is so painful that it's numbed him to the normal levels of pain of being hit. It takes a headbutt to awaken his spirit. This demonstration is key to his future success though. He can access an enormously high level of aggression, but he needs to be provoked. He basically needs a stimulus, and boxing is the search for that stimulus. He's just lost his way. This is why this film is not about boxing. It's the search for the stimulus to drive improvement. We then see an important and surprising revelation after the fight. Even when he wins, he's still perceived as a failure, a bum. This is the world. Good work is often not rewarded. Rocky is trying to increase his self-esteem, who he is, with what he's doing. And that's a flawed strategy. Self-esteem, who he is and who he thinks he is not improved by what he does if what he does isn't valued. In this case, boxing. He's seen as a bum and thinks of himself as a bum. He's lost the path of the noble warrior fighting for honor and has ended up fighting for $40.55. And the film still holds appeal because it actually charts one way to increase self-esteem. I stress this point. The film is not about boxing. It's about self-respect and how those are achieved through love. The line by Spiderico of "You got lucky" and Rocky's almost fourth wall break to the camera as he looks at it to say, "Do I look lucky?" It's wonderful. The theme of luck, or its more empowering twin, opportunity, is explored throughout the film. We're an observer in this man's life, and what we see is a man who stops to connect with a dog at the pet shop and the singers on the street. His violence has not embittered him. He's very much alive inside and deeply yearns for connection. He is lonely. His conversations with his turtles and goldfish indicate this. He shows a high level of empathy for other creatures, demonstrating a high capacity to love. This film is demonstrating that aggression and love can coexist in the same person. They aren't mutually exclusive. They are opposite sides of the same coin. You just have to express them in the right place at the right time. However, he is disorganized and his environment is very chaotic. He's given up on himself, indicating a low self-esteem again. He's not taking care of his health, echoed with the beer and his other nutritional choices. So, we have a man clearly capable of love, but with such low self-esteem. Then follows this scene where he looks at the photo and the disappointment we see in his eyes of the promise lost from that which he had as a child jumps off the screen. We now understand this is not where he thought he would be, and he's silently angry that things have turned out this way. This isn't a man who has settled or resigned to his fate. He just can't see a way out. Decisions and choices have led him here, but he can't see it at the moment. He is totally disconnected from the causal relationship. Your life is a reflection of your decisions when chances occur. This is the first step to changing your reality. Don't accept where you are. Feel anger about it, because anger is a great motivating emotion. There's great storytelling in the film, which is what gives it so much weight. The foreshadowing of the pet shop when he whistles to the puppy and the practice joke in the mirror comes immediately to fruition in the next scene. We realize as the audience that everything in this film is going to make sense. This is not just voyeurism. The clues are there if we pay attention. We see that the joke has purpose. We recognize that once she goes, his energy drops and he goes. She gives him that energy. In these first few moments, we can see he's fueled by injustice and love, and you need fuel to make a change. Rocky's interaction with Bob is interesting not only in the fact that it undercuts the idea of a mindless, violent thug. He's not quick to anger, but we know that from the fight, his anger is powerful when it arrives. But we also see him offering advice. You should have planned ahead. Often it's easier to see the solutions to others' problems than to see your own. When put in a position of power, he exercises good judgment. We can evaluate that his current position is not due to a poor value system. We then look at his relationship with his employer. His plan is long-term thinking, and it's the long-term thinking that has led him to his current situation. He hasn't been a short-term thinker. He spent time, much time, accepting the safe long-term strategy of life rather than being present to the moment and looking for and taking opportunities when they present. This film is a ringing endorsement to be present to the moment, and when you must, make short-term, achievable goals. Make them within your control rather than the long-term goals that rely on others. Rocky has taken the path of a hired henchman, a role not requiring honor or morals. It requires serving a master, whereas a professional fighter requires serving the best version of yourself. A henchman is the most disreputable version of a warrior, a waste of a true warrior's talents, a bastardization. A warrior normally serves someone, a king. Garzo is the king to Rocky's hired soldier. Choose a poor employer, and this will affect your view of yourself. We now look at his hobby. Now, hobby's there to bring relief and enjoyment. It's the rest and recuperation from work. He has a hobby. that brings stress and where he's not respected. This is illustrated in the locker. It further erodes his self-esteem and self-image, and we see the trap here. If what you do erodes your view of yourself, it cannot bring the therapy that it's supposed to. Your hobby needs to elevate your sense of self and achievement. We also see that he's not psychologically strong enough at this stage to defend himself from the onslaught and call it out as it happens. He just accepts it. He doesn't fight for his own self-image because, in truth, he doesn't believe he's worth it. As the day ends, he returns to this girl. He shares his story of the locker, looking for a nurturing force, but he's not making the correct decisions to put Adrian in the nurturing position. He's not showing vulnerability. He starts, it's a tough day, but immediately states that it doesn't bother him, selling the upsides of losing the locker, undercutting her opportunity to nurture. This is a poor decision. If you're looking for a nurturing force, you have to show vulnerability for them to provide nurture. This then leads Rocky to give his view of the world. He sees a cold, negative landscape at the moment, full of creeps, and to be fair, his perception's pretty accurate. He is met with negativity and belittlement in nearly all of his interactions. And then he goes to meet his ghost of Christmas future, Paulie. Paulie is what Rocky will become if he loses hope. Embittered. His aggression isn't constructive. It's warped his view of his sister, Adrian, describing her as a loser who'll die alone. This is a projection, yes, but it's also the corrupting power of bitterness on the ones most dear to us. Becoming embittered destroys the way we even see those closest to us. Losing hope hurts not only you, but also your loved ones, regardless of intention. In what is essentially a conversation with the worst version of his future self, Rocky asks whether he needs money or better looks to connect with Adrian. He thinks that the way to attract her is through humour, but this is an evolutionary strategy to subvert aggression. Demonstrating humour in a bad situation can show control and calmness, and that's attractive to a mate wanting security. But the intention of these jokes as part of his interactions is to hide his vulnerability. He wants nurturing from her, and she works with animals, indicating a high chance that she's a nurturing force, but his poor strategy and tactics are betraying him. While Rocky sees the world as full of creeps, we then find out what he most respects. Just as Paulie is Rocky's future shadow self, Apollo is Rocky's view of his best self, and what makes him his best self is that he took his shot. You see, Rocky sees the difference between himself and Apollo is not that Apollo had an opportunity, it's that Apollo took his opportunity. We then see Rocky converse with Marie, and this is one of the best examples of giving advice that you don't take. He's talking about a reputation, a legacy. He's taken a path that has blighted his reputation. He's considered a bum. His advice to her about smart people leading to smart friends is an insight into his relationship with Paulie. Paulie is his friend, and whether he likes it or not, is an influence on him. He's trapped though because the girl that he loves is related to this very negative force. Paulie is an angry loser who will eventually shift Rocky into being an angry loser if he's not careful. We now look at Apollo, the top of the hierarchy, who has no fear because he's so high on self-confidence. Apollo finds Rocky not through his real name, which is meaningless and has been tainted by the stench of bum, but by his moniker, his fighting name. Apollo sees a symbolism in his name. Having a symbol is imperative for identity development because it's aspirational. It projects a best version of yourself. The Italian Stallion, a label Rocky invented years before when he was still full of hope, is the key to his redemption. His name and records since then mean nothing. The opportunity was created by the magical creation of a vision of himself years before, which again he downplays when asked because of his low self-esteem. Basically, the best version of yourself in the past is the path to getting back to the best version of yourself in the present. The chance, something outside of his sphere of control, has now been created. Now we come to Thanksgiving, and this is the turning point of the film. This is the first time we see Rocky make a better decision. Paulie's insults and anger create a hostile environment. In this hostile situation, humour is the correct course of action. It diffuses, demonstrating an ability to cope with stress with higher brain function, not lower brain fight, which is attractive to Adrian, who's also very cerebral. Then he makes the second better decision, which is to express vulnerability to a nurturer, and the impact of that imagery can't be understated. Hey presto, the door springs open and there she is, ready. He did the right thing at the right time, and he instantly gets the result. This is a huge lesson. The right results in life come from doing the correct things. It's not perseverance or effort. It's just doing the correct things. What Rocky then does is expand the image she has of him with truth. He doesn't try to impress or agree with her. She quickly learns that he's not sentimental. He's very real-worldly. He's a fixer of problems and has high confidence. He started fighting at 15 years old. He wanted to be a pro fighter, not because he wanted to hurt others, but because he wanted to prove value to himself. Basically, boxing was supposed to give him self-esteem. He thinks he's a bum because he didn't go for his shot. He can see his own physical shortcomings, a lack of grace, but he also knows his strengths, that he hits hard, showing his self-awareness. He's complimentary about her physical ability, and then they share a connected, motivating moment in the past about body and mind. They're mirror opposites. Together, they're complete, an opposite symmetry. She asks why he fights now. He jokes it off with, "I can't sing or dance." This is an appropriate time to use humour. The answer to why he fights is not a rational one. It's an emotional one, and it's one that she needs to experience because the answer to that question is why she will ultimately love him. We'll come back to that. As she continues to try to understand him, she asks him again, "Why do you want to be a fighter?" He acknowledges the downside rationale of the choice. You have to be a moron and will end up a bum. This is the first time he's been vulnerable about being a fighter, and again, she nurtures. "I don't think you're a bum." Why do it if it hurts? Rocky's reason in effect is, the pain brings out the best in me. He requires a lot of pain to transform into his higher self. That's a hard thing to sell on the first date. Back at his apartment, she's still trying to understand him rationally. She doesn't feel safe around him and still perceives him as a potential threat. She doesn't understand the violence, and this causes her anxiety. And also, there is a knife embedded in the mattress. This could have gone a very different way if it was a different type of movie. He moves in and corners her, and she doesn't trust his words. And that's because she's anxious of his violence, his actions, so it requires actions to offset that. The open vulnerability of him stating his desire, wanting to kiss her, and the gentleness of him giving her the choice of whether she kisses him back demonstrates through action, not words. Every decision he's made in this has been a better decision. He steered into his vulnerability and didn't continually deflect with humour. He stated honestly as he knew. Making these better decisions gives a better result. And what's the immediate effect of making better decisions and getting better results? You make more better decisions. When Mick is disrespectful to him the next day about the sparring, he finally calls it out. Rocky, by implication, has been saying nothing for 6 years. Rocky tried to turn pro at 22 when he came up with the Italian Stallion, and gave up after 2 years and went to become a hired hand. So why did he do it now? Why the next day? Because Adrian had increased his esteem and he valued himself more. And we see something very interesting. Mickey's disrespect is because Rocky gave up on being a pro, and that is a waste of life. This actually concurs with Rocky's own thoughts that he expressed to Adrian the night before. So Rocky and Mickey are in agreement, which is why it's so important to tell your truth and for others to do so as well. Then you find out who your real allies are. Of course, his age can seem to give that freedom to speak his mind. But it's not his age, it's wisdom. Mickey's attitude is the verbal meting out of the punishment to Rocky for poor decisions. When Rocky is offered the chance to fight for the title, his first answer is no, and that's a poor decision. Why? Just because you start on the right path, the factors that led you to the poor decisions, in this case low self-esteem, will come back to haunt you under stress. I fight in clubs. Is that low self-esteem returning? But Mr. Juergens frames the issue in the same way that Rocky framed it in the bar to Andy. Take your shot. Apollo took his shot. You can't let this pass you by. A young man didn't do what he had to do to be a pro. An adult at 30 years old is given a second shot, a chance. This is time machine stuff and dramatically creates a crossroads moment. Repeat the mistakes of the past or make a better decision. But this device is just the most extreme version. You can achieve close to this by just making better decisions each and every day. The media, with their virtually no chance of winning, represents the rest of the world after you've made a life-changing decision. And it's not their responsibility to dream up how you can do it. That's your job. But Apollo demonstrates why he's a champion and a winner. He focuses on the chance, not on the virtually no. Rocky's consistent with his view on Creed. He doesn't try to pull down Creed. He aspires to be like Creed. Diminishing Creed is the actions of the embittered man, like Paulie. When you want to pull others down, that's a reflection on you, not them. Paulie's view that Apollo is making him a fool shows the way that the embittered see the world. Rising isn't good because you can get higher. It's bad because there's further to be witnessed falling. Rocky then publicly proclaims Adrian as his girlfriend. This is a big deal. They've been together for only a few days, but he's proud, and in saying it to the world, we see their symbiotic relationship. His outgoing nature feeds and provides her with confidence. Paulie wants to get involved with Rocky's training, and here Rocky makes another great decision. He's cleaning up his act. He doesn't want Paulie around because he's too negative. It's important when you're trying to right the ship to keep negative influences at arm's length if you can't get rid of them. Distance is better. We also find out that the TV spot does bother him. He now knows that taking the shot, putting yourself in the position to improve your life, doesn't mean you're going to get respect. You need to do more than just turn up to life. His employer gives him $500, and Garzo speaks about luck being on his side and advises him no smoking. We don't see him smoking again until Rocky V. And then there's a passing of the torch. Garza was a father figure, a kind man who led Rocky astray. Mickey is the replacement father figure, a harsh man who wants the best for Rocky's life. These are mirror images. Mickey comes to see him and speaks of luck, like Garzo, but when Garzo speaks of lady luck on Rocky's side, Mickey speaks of freak luck, undeserved. This rings true because in life, good people or good things don't always come in the outward package that is pleasing. You have to look past image and cross-reference intention with potential outcome. An influencer may say great things and make you feel good, but if they've led you down the wrong path, it's worthless. How do you know it's the wrong path? It's the end of the path where you might want to be 5 years from now. Mickey then starts his sales pitch and it's all about himself, and it appears self-serving, because it is. Then he tries a compliment, and it seems insincere. The advice about not drinking, mirroring Garzo's not smoking, is practical. Rocky takes it. Rocky then makes a great decision. He expresses his true feelings. He's justifiably angry from the injustice again, and we witness another display of his rage. He doesn't shy away from his anger. Expressing anger in the right circumstances against an inanimate object is healthy, and he'll require this rage to overcome the enormity of the challenge. Anger can overcome fear. Rocky's been very hurt by being ignored and humiliated for so many years, but at a deep level, he knows that he's part responsible for it because he left his own chosen righteous path. When you disrespect yourself by not doing the best for you, others will disrespect you. Express your anger and then do what's in your best interests. And now, Rocky makes another pivotal better decision. He's communicated his frustration and anger, and then he makes a constructive decision to accept help. Don't let the fire of anger burn your enterprise down. This film's a demonstration of how making a number of better decisions will change your life. And we now see Rocky begin immediately cultivating order in his life and start setting boundaries for conduct. Rising early, drinking eggs, making the sacrifices, and immediately benchmarking his current state by doing a run. You need to know where you are so you can plot a progression to where you want to be. In a short space of time, from better decisions, he's gained a life partner, taken an opportunity, job-wise, when it presented, swapped a kind father figure who led him astray for a harsh father figure who'll keep him honest, so now he goes to work on his friendships. He meets Paulie immediately after the first run and is honest with him in a way that he's never been before. In being honest, he sets a boundary. Saying what you will not tolerate is the best way to deal with a negative person. Rocky then meets Adrian and sets a boundary there too, with his no fooling around. And if you think about it, he's only been with her for a few days. How many people would compromise on this for fear of losing their new love or not wanting to make that sacrifice? But he arrives at this decision by himself, and that's why when Mickey says, "Women weaken legs," Rocky's on board. Rocky is taking responsibility for his life. If you don't want others to nag or restrict you, impose order and restriction on yourself if you know it to be in your best interests. It immediately shifts their nagging to support. While she is upset, he chooses tenderness, not jokes, which again is a better decision. He's learning and applying the lessons he learns fast. This is why it doesn't decrease her confidence that he doesn't want to fool around. She can improve while he improves. When Paulie arranges the interview, Rocky's concern is how he will look, and this is valid. He's trying really hard to rebuild his self-esteem, and the media and public leave him open to that being pulled down again. When you're in this stage, a person is delicate, must be very careful what they expose themselves to. Stay off the social medias, the Facebooks and Twitters. But he again makes a constructive decision. He is assertive and sets up a boundary, stating no cheap shots, which he doesn't. If you don't want people to take advantage, start by telling them not to take advantage. She frames it as unorthodox training, rather than crazy, stupid, ridiculous training. If you tell people what you will accept and what you want, there's an increased chance they will accommodate. If they don't, that's the test. They failed, and you now know to stay away next time. In doing that, he again increases his self-esteem. Rocky's irritation with Paulie is that it interferes with his newly imposed order that he's trying to implement. In competition, intention doesn't matter, results do. In life, intention matters more than results. This is competition, and Rocky was disorganized and is now trying to gain order. Rocky's also correctly worked out that he needs the best person for the job, and Paulie knows nothing about fighting. Again, this is because in competition, result is all that matters. This is another better decision. But not confronting him and communicating is not the best decision. I think he's avoided confrontation and clear thinking because he's got multiple factors to juggle. First, people in a very negative mindset won't respond to reason. Second, he doesn't want to suggest Paulie for his old job because he might need it afterwards. In the back of his mind, he still has not yet fully committed to his endeavour. Thirdly, it would devalue the role even further if Paulie, a man who knows nothing about fighting, could do it, which would lower Rocky's self-esteem even further and reveal how much time he actually wasted with his living. Multiple factors will cloud clear thinking unless you express them. But Rocky's confusion, generated from these factors, and the fact that it is most hard to deal with your shadow self, brings out the protective maternal instinct in Adrian. Her desire to protect Rocky from Paulie for the first time connects her to the positive side of anger as a healthy motivating force for change. It fuels her to make a positive change from the toxic environment she's endured with Paulie and surround herself with a positive influence by living with Rocky. And we see Mickey rise in enthusiasm as he makes Rocky earn his respect as a father figure. Mickey is now saying, "We've got a chance, we're going to win." Rocky then demonstrates high character with Paulie, showing forgiveness and love after their confrontation. He gives Paulie a small opportunity to use his skills, essentially giving him hope. But he starts by gently putting him down, because you need to show a little strength with those who confront you, but then takes the high-minded approach of empowering him. Rocky's good decisions are increasing his resources, and he's now able to share that. In the training scene, we see most of him by himself in this journey. No one's really telling him he's doing well. He knows it. He's flooded with his own good feeling. This is the physical manifestation of creating your own self-esteem. I'd say that you actually need exercise to build self-esteem. The training is not really a physical change. It's not really a skills learning process. This is a personal internal journey solidifying a higher self-esteem. If time's short, you can make more meaningful change by changing your psychology than your physical body. As he gallops along the side of the ship, we feel the swell of confidence. The stairs are the graphic representation of the ascension of his self-esteem. Improving it step by step by bringing order and culminating in that display at the top embodies his moniker, the Italian Stallion, bringing it to bear on his life. When the time finally comes, the night before, he can't sleep. He stares at the image of himself on the cover of Time and the poster of Rocky Marciano, the man that the world sees and the champion he was likened to, and the doubt settles in. Doubt visits at night because there are no distractions. The better decision than tossing and turning is to take the walk, and he goes to survey the battleground. He makes the discovery that even though you can change your position in your own universe, that doesn't mean the world will change the position they've assigned you. People need more evidence than just your personal commitment. They require a display. He's still perceived as a joke who can't win. But in order to pull off a change, the first person you have to convince is yourself. In his training, he created and formed a team around him that believed he could win. They enabled a necessary delusion which closed the gap between the fantasy and the reality. Delusion's not always bad. In fact, it's essential in the beginning of an endeavor to protect the psyche. You can't keep facing the reality daily, but you will have to face it in the end. Rocky comes in this pause of reflection to a moment of clarity. It doesn't really matter if he loses. That's not going to affect the universe. This is the ideal mind state, I would say, for life. To acknowledge that you're the center of your universe, which he's done through his training, whilst acknowledging that those around him are the centers of their universes, as he's done with Adrian, Paulie, Mickey, Garzo, while simultaneously accepting that he is insignificant in the greater scheme of the universe. This to me is real growth. And now, in these moments, he can revisit the thought he initially had that there's no point in fighting because he can't win. Sometimes you have to put deep philosophical questions on the back burner and make progress before you come back to them. Before, he was a nobody. This means not only insignificant in the universe, but also in his own. With higher self-esteem, he removes what he cannot control. He can't control winning, and he can't control the pain. But he can control whether he goes the distance. Now luckily, as no one's ever gone the distance, this is going to separate him from others, thus making him special. In competition and in life, focus on what you can control. Essentially, he will go through a baptism of hellfire and pain to forge his rebirth. He's created a mold with the training, but pain is the fire to forge a new identity that he hopes will stand forever. This will redeem him from a life of bad choices. The choice to be standing no matter what. The choice to not stay down. These are a reflection of a life where you keep submitting and don't stand up for yourself will destroy your self-esteem. This is a painful laying down to rest, killing of the bum identity forever. If he emerges the other side, having made the choice to stand up, he will have permanently changed his self-esteem and changed his view of himself, he believes. He wears the robe for Paulie because that small gesture will raise Paulie up too. But there is a price to pay in Rocky's self-image. This illustrates good deeds are not free. They will cost you. There is a trade, so be careful who you trade with. And be sure you can absorb the cost. But there's also a quid pro quo of sorts, as Paulie has responded to the occasion by paying $250 for an escort to accompany him. Paulie pays for the illusion of love displayed on his arm, while Rocky's genuine love stays hidden in the depths of the arena. In the moments before, he jokes that Adrian should fight for him so he can avoid it. The jest conceals his fear, and he's again afflicted by his dropping self-esteem, which targets the superficial of the baggy robe. But finally, he settles on his truth, which he states twice for her to not leave, because otherwise the whole enterprise isn't worth it, suggesting that his fear really lies in abandonment. Why of all the things does he labour this point? She's shown no track record of that behaviour. Because she is his esteem. If he goes out to smelt his self-esteem in the furnace of the fight, but if that fails, he needs the fallback on her esteem for him. He's not doing it for her, but she was the catalyst for his transformation and has made herself an intrinsic part of how he views himself. What is important to note here is that he's choosing to redefine himself in the ring while simultaneously recognizing her importance. If he simply relied on her view of him, he's putting his self-image in the hands of another and defining himself by someone else's view. That would be a poor strategy. A partner needs to help you discover the best version of yourself, but you are the one that must actually find it. In the ring, he's introduced as Philadelphia's favourite son. The irony of the fact that just 5 weeks before, the city as he knew it was cold and hostile to him. But the crowd's fickle. Within a minute of the opening round, he knocks the champion down. It's fair to say that this was more to do with Apollo underestimating his opponent, but the act of courage gives Rocky the confidence to compete as an equal. And that's the point. To gain confidence, you have to act. Then you get the confidence. It's counterintuitive. It's not a good strategy to wait for the confidence before you do the act, because it's never going to come. Don't wait for the time you feel good, because you will never feel good. You must act, and then you'll start to feel good. His nose is broken at the end of the first round, and Apollo has matched the first-time occurrences in a fight. Rocky stated that he was very proud of his nose not being broken, but he must lose all that he was previously proud of and rebuild anew. He will be taken apart piece by piece in this fight. The fact that what hadn't happened in 64 fights happens in the first round also gives an indication to us of the brutality that he's going to have to endure. In round 2, they taunt each other, and for Rocky this is an indication his intention is to stand up and fight. But what Apollo hasn't factored in is that Rocky is fueled by this type of humiliation. Rocky's respect for Apollo is put on hold during the fight, and he must now just endure. This is why the cards 3, 5, 7 work so well. We don't need to see the fight blow by blow. We've accepted as an audience that the goal is not technical boxing, it's the endurance and to keep standing. This is why I say the film's not about boxing. We're shown the 13th round, the superstition round, the unlucky round, which he makes through, and the penultimate round, the 14th round. So close to the end. Rocky's being knocked off his feet repeatedly, but bouncing and spinning around, pushing himself up. He's in real trouble, but his focus is clear. He is remaining standing. Then a blow is unleashed that floors him. Mickey's telling him to stay down. Firstly, to protect him. Maybe he thinks 14 rounds is good enough. Maybe he's computing risk versus reward. But now Rocky and Mickey are not in alignment. And Rocky is very clear in his purpose, and even the best intentioned people who love you will inadvertently conspire to defeat you from your purpose unless you are clear. This is why you must know your own purpose. At this moment, Adrian comes in, and what she witnesses is the answer to the question that she's been asking that he could not answer. Why does he fight? It's not a rational explanation, but what she sees is the answer. He doesn't fight to hurt people. He fights because he becomes his best self in that situation. In that recomposure, she faces her own demon, her anxiety about violence, and raises her eyes in strength for him, again showing how they bring out the best in each other. As he's knocked down and is prostrate on the floor, this is the posture of total submission, grovelling almost as if he's begging for forgiveness to himself for the sins he's committed. He climbs to his knees as if he's asking himself for mercy for himself. And then he rises, cleansed. This is the resurrection that was on display at the beginning. He beckons Apollo on with conviction. Not arrogance, not aggression, just the acceptance that this can continue. And it's this acceptance that actually breaks Apollo. He goes from shock to feeling bad to respect. He realizes in that moment that he doesn't understand his opponent. He doesn't understand him spiritually, and it's this that makes Rocky unique. The thought Apollo seems to have is, I'm the best. I don't think I would have got up from that. Apollo then projects strength to hide his weakness. In the future films, this will be his undoing. Rocky, on the other hand, accepts his weakness. He's not at odds and fighting himself. He's just focused on his own lane. I want to stand no matter what that means. Rocky's goal is purely in his control, to keep getting up and facing. At the end of the fight, he calls for his girlfriend. That's all he's invested in, and both fighters accept there will be no rematch. It's in neither of their interests. This stunt has backfired for Apollo, and Rocky's journeyed through the levels of Hades, doesn't wish to return. He has got what he came for, his self-esteem and self-respect. After calling for her, when she arrives, his first words are, and it speaks to me. He hasn't gone on that journey alone. He's carried the image of her perfectly in his mind throughout. It's so much harder if you don't have a picture, a personification or image of what you're going through hell for. Your chances of getting through decrease. The abstract doesn't work. Get an image, a representation, and look at it. Her love for him is that she finally understands why he fights. She opened to it initially when she stood up to Paulie, but she witnessed its true beauty in that 14th round and understands that he is willing to go through hell to be better. The willingness to accept the pain of life to be better is a virtue to truly love. When I said at the beginning this was a love story, that's what I meant. He's opened her eyes to the fact that we must fight to improve. Aggression is a powerful changing force. She's only ever experienced the negative, spiteful, self-destructive side of aggression with Paulie. She witnessed the constructive side of aggression and finally understands it and appreciates it. At the film's climax, we can see he's gained his self-esteem. He loves himself. She has gained her self-confidence. She loves herself. She loves him for what he's brought out in her. He loves her for what she's catalyzed. This is perfect symmetry love.
I love you.
And just to remember, keeping Paulie around finally pays off, because otherwise she couldn't have ever gotten in the ring. This film also provides a condensed version of how to go from the bottom of the hierarchy to the top. It starts with making better decisions, taking opportunities, ordering your life, and as life is suffering, using the suffering of life to generate aggression that you use constructively. I know the story around how this film was made, and that many of the features of the film that actually raise it to classic status are happy accidents. The empty ice rink and the ending with him calling for her were due to budgetary constraints, but made those scenes work and immortalize the conclusion. And this tells me more about the nature of story than anything else. If I can derive these meanings from a film, some that were intended, some not, some a mistake, some just for budget, maybe we can realize that we can all find meaning in texts and images that are beyond the intentions or desires of the original creators, whoever they were supposed to have been written by. Right, on to Rocky 2. If this video got you thinking, you found it helpful, or encouraged you to watch the film again, then hit the thumbs up and ring that bell icon like Stallone's dad.
Get it off! Get it off! You gotta get it off!
As always, have your say in the comments, babe, and if you like my vibe, please subscribe.